My name is Annie Philpott, and I'm the founder of the Pleasure Project, and today I'm going to tell you everything you ever wanted to know about pleasurable, safer sex, but were too afraid to ask. But before I do that, before I get into that, I'm going to tell you about a sex toy. And it's a sex toy that I used to live in Thailand. Friends of mine in Thailand had told me about. It's spreading by word of mouth that people are talking about this sex toy. It's got 2 rings, an inner ring that you can put inside yourself and then walk around, and it feels kind of nice just going around the house. Or, in fact, when you have sex, it kind of creates this sort of deep tickle inside, a bit like somebody scratching the back of your eyeballs, and it feels really good when you're having sex. It's also got an outer ring, so it rubs against the clitoris, so it feels like gives that bump and grind, an extra bit of friction when you're having sex, and can feel really, really good. It's really got lots of lube on it, so it makes sex feel really smooth and warm. And I've heard lots of guys say that they really like that kind of warm, lubricated feel when you're having sex. So it feels really, really hot. Some of you might have guessed and may have seen that this is a female condom. So it also prevents unintended pregnancy, stops you getting a sexually transmitted disease, and that's what the Pleasure Project is all about. We think that the sexy can be put back into safer sex. And we think that the public health world and people working in sex education, like I was before I founded the Pleasure Project, should be sexying up safer sex. And we think there's a lot of wisdom and a lot of creativity out there with people who already are negotiating safer sex and doing it in a fun, sexy way around the world. And that's because sex education is rarely sexy, whereas in fact, most of us have sex for pleasure. Erotica is rarely safe. So people making erotic materials rarely think about safety. So we want to put the sexy back into safer sex. My inspiration for the Pleasure Project was going to an AIDS conference about 10 years ago and being in a session where somebody was talking about an insertive probe and a receptive cavity and talking about that. And it took me about 20 minutes to realize that this guy was actually talking about sex, about penetrative sex. And I thought, enough's enough. AIDS is not an airborne disease. We're having sex when we get AIDS. And also I was fed up with all the moralism around sex education, being told that you're a bad person if you don't wear a condom, you know, being basically judged for having sex. So what we do is we have fun. We get people who work in sex education. This is a post to be used at one of the AIDS conferences to get people to think about the fact that they are sexual beings, even though they're sex educators. They may masturbate that night, and masturbation is fun and safe. And so we like to talk about good, safe sex and try to have fun talking about all of the ways that people do that. And there's loads of examples around the world that we've collected. So, for example, sex workers in India have told me about how they like to think about the Kama Sutra and how there's lots of examples of non-penetrative sex in the Kama Sutra when they talk to their clients about how to have safer sex. Also, women in Senegal have talked to me about sexy beads that are on their hips that make a really sexy noise that they promote with the female condom. So there's a whole range of ways that we promote kissing, talking dirty, that is also actually good, safe sex. And I have an ambition to create the biggest global fantasy bank in the world. So we're collecting fantasies through discussions, through salons, through readings in bookshops. Our latest one was in Delhi, where people read their fantasies and listen to fantasies, and that's safe. So we're collecting those on our website. This is a publication that is now in the 2nd edition. It has 45 case studies of people who eroticize safer sex from all around the world, from northern Nigeria to Mongolia. We've also worked with people making erotic films and porn film makers to try and get them to put condoms in their films and get people to be turned on when they're watching erotic films. So there's lots of great examples around the world that we want to share, from social marketing, condoms to gay men, to promoting family planning in Mexico, that are done in a very, very sexy way. And we want to share that information around the world. But, of course, it's not always easy. People think it's a bit silly. The medical world that I come from think, this isn't very serious. This is about desire and pleasure. So we also publish evidence. This is a recent evidence review about the fact that it actually works to eroticize safer sex. And we've been published in the Lancet also, which is one of the world's premier medical journals, so that people take us a bit more seriously. We have published evidence about what techniques work when people want to eroticize safer sex. How can you learn about good, safe sex? If you have good sexual self-esteem, Does it mean that you're more likely to practice good, safe sex? Of course, the answer is yes. And why do I do this? Because I think that we can't learn how to say no if we're not taught how to say yes and say yes to good, safe sex.